Hey everyone, so moving on to our quadratic equations, we're going to look at how the graph would look like, alright? And we know that the quadratic equation is of the form ax squared, okay, y equals to ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, c are any real number or number, alright? So we're going to look at how the graph would look like, okay? Now, I'm going to give you the very basic shape first before we actually sketch some actual graphs. For the graph that have a that are bigger than 0, your graph would look like a U shape, right? Basically a happy shape, all right? Then if a is less than 0, if a is a negative real number, your graph would look like a N shape, basically a sad face. All right, so that's one way to think about it. If a is positive, you are actually feeling positive. Therefore, you are feeling happy, smiley face. If a is negative, you're feeling negative, you're down and sad, like me, then it will be a sad face. All right. So that's the general idea for our quadratic equation, and the shape basically determines the it's dependent on the coefficient of x squared. All right. So let's take a look at some actual graphs right now. So I'm gonna sketch my axis. Okay, so x, y, and now 0 origin. Let's sketch the first graph. Keep it very simple. Y equals to x squared. All right, so it's gonna be a U shape because a is bigger than 0. A is 1, hence a U shape. And if you think about it, well, at x equals 0, y equals to 0. At x equals to 1, y is gonna be 1. At x equals to minus 1, y will be 1 as well. So we know that at 0, 0, it will be the minimum point. All right. So I'm going to just draw this shape, trying to keep it as symmetrical as possible. All right. So it looks something like this, maybe not that steep on the first time. You can actually sketch it on whatever graphing calculator websites are there out there. You see a very nice U shape, and later part, a very better looking N shape. All right. Now, when it comes to our quadratic graph, there's a few things that you need to know. All right, so this is the y equals x squared graph. You know that in the letter U and the small letter n, you know that there's sort of this pin, right? You notice at this point here. Actually, I should draw it over here. So you notice there's like a small pin, right? It's like a minimum and a maximum point, right? So with that in mind, that is basically the turning point, right? You notice because it's at the minimum and or the maximum, right? It's basically you move from one way to the other. Hence, what we call the turning point. Reason why I call it a turning point? If you look at the U shape of y equals x squared, your gradient was negative, your gradient was negative, your gradient was negative. Then it became positive after the turning point. Same thing for the N shape quadratic equation. Your gradient was positive and then became negative. All right. So this is to take note when it comes to your quadratic graph. All right, which is that it's a U shape. So there are some turning points. So in this case, the turning point, it will be at the minimum value at 0, 0. Now let's take a look at another graph. Let's say we have y equals to minus x squared, let's say plus 1. All right. So it's going to be an N-shaped graph. And we're going to key in some values. All right. At x equals to 0, y equals to 1. So we have a point here. At x equals to 1, y equals to 0. So we have minus 1 and 1. So what you notice is that your graph is going to pass through these points as well. All right. The minimum point is at, let me try to draw it smoothly. Your minimum is going to be at 0, 1, because the idea is that x squared cannot be less than 0. It is bigger than or equals to minus 1. So x squared is bigger than or equals to 0. Therefore, for this case, we have minus x squared, which is less than or equals to 0. Right, then if you plus 1, then it will be less than or equals to 1. And again, it's a N-shaped graph because your coefficient of x squared is minus 1. Hence the N shape with a turning point at x equals to 0, y equals to 1. Because of the idea is for x squared to give the most minimum, for the max, sorry, it's a maximum value, not a minimum value, maximum value, because minus x squared, the greatest value of minus x squared is at 0, hence 0 plus 1 is 1. Alright, so this is the general shape of a quadratic graph. Alright, now in part 2 of the video, I'll show you how to draw other types of quadratic graph where it needs to involve some of the tools that you've learned so far, the factorization or the completing the square or the quadratic formula. Alright, but this is just the basics, just an introduction, your U and N shape.